Well, good afternoon to you, Nompu, and to the viewers at home. Well, the stage is set for this much-anticipated debate, which will be debating the report that has been tabled to Parliament and the Speaker of the Section 89 Independent Panel report. Of course, the conclusion of that report is that the President Cyril Ramaphosa, may have violated the Constitution, and concluding that he has a case to answer. Now, in terms of the processes of Parliament, that report has to be formally tabled in the National Assembly for consideration. And today what we will be looking at is how the different political parties will fare in terms of whether they want to support or reject this particular report. Of course, the minimum number of MPs that should be present in the House in order to have a quorum is 134. But given that there are 400 seats in the National Assembly, it means that for this report to go through or to be adopted, at least a minimum of 201 members of Parliament must approve it. Now, it's going to be a numbers game, given that the ANC has about 230 MPs, meaning that they can comfortably actually adopt this report if all their members are actually supporting this particular recommendation of the independent panel. But of course, we've heard and also interviewed some of the MPs that have actually expressed misgivings around the position that has been taken by the ANC that instructed all of its MPs to actually vote to reject this particular report. Speaking to ANC MP Supra Mahumapelo earlier on, he did indicate that his intention as an MP is that he's going to be voting for accountability, meaning that he intends to vote to support the recommendation made by the Section 89 Independent Panel. Now, where the trick is that how many more ANC MPs are actually going to be following suit in the line of Mr. Supra Mahumapelo. Of course, it would take at least 30 MPs from the ANC who vote together with the opposition parties that would enable the House to adopt or support this particular report. So it's going to be a numbers game, Nompu. Of course, even amongst the opposition benches, not all the opposition parties are in support of the recommendation to adopt this report, and some saying that perhaps maybe this sitting of this afternoon may be wasteful expenditure because the President has already indicated that he wants to take this report that is subject for consideration today on review. And therefore, if the courts had to put or set aside that report, it would mean that perhaps maybe the proceedings of today may be declared invalid. But of course, as we speak to you now, members of Parliament have been making their way into the City Hall, which is where this afternoon sitting is going to be held. And the ANC also earlier this morning holding a last-minute caucus to actually ensure that they reiterate the party line that the members must vote to reject that particular report. Of course, there's quite a lot of activities as we are about an hour away from today's sitting. Whether how the sitting will go and whether will there be any theatrics as we've come to see in the National Assembly, it's something that remains to be seen. But for now, Nompu, we look forward to that 2 o'clock time where this report is set to be discussed and considered by the National Assembly.
Yeah. Bulelani, just to put you a little bit on the spot there, from what you know and from the conversations that you've been having with the various parties, do you think that it's a done deal that in fact the ANC will have that majority to reject it, along with the other parties that are not in favor of actually validating the report?
Well, Nompu, it's quite a difficult call to make because if we go by history, I don't think there has been sufficient numbers within the ANC that defy a party line. But of course, things may be fluid and different this time around, and it's going to depend really much on the number of ANC MPs that are going to be voting in support of this report. How many of those MPs will come from the ANC, it remains a mystery for now, but we know quite a handful of them that have indicated publicly their intention to vote to support this report. But the threshold to break is that there must be at least 30 MPs from the ANC that will be voting to support this report that may actually break the camel's back that would lead to the adoption of this report. But as I've said earlier on, even within the opposition parties, there are some who will be voting for the rejection of this report. So it's going to boil down to how many people actually choose to support and how many people choose to reject this report. And at this stage, it's very difficult to make a call on whether it's a done deal or not.
Yeah,
Nompu?
no, I do hear you. And on the last matter that I want to discuss with you, you talked about wasteful expenditure. Why was the decision taken to have this sitting, despite the fact that the president has taken this issue on review? And of course, if the review is in his favor, then like you say, it would be a wasted exercise today.
Well, Nompu, legally, there's nothing that is stopping Parliament from proceeding with this sitting, because Parliament has actually sought a legal advice from its legal advisors, who then advise that in the absence of an interdict prohibiting this sitting, Parliament can actually go ahead and actually host this sitting. But the question of whether this sitting is wasteful expenditure arises from the fear that if the report that is subject for discussion today is set aside by the Constitutional Court, it would mean that whatever decision that is taken here today would then also, by extension, be declared invalid. So that's the reason, or the argument that has been raised by at least one of the political parties that we've raised this morning. But of course, Parliament again has been at pains to emphasize that it's going to exercise its constitutional obligations of executing its duties, and it will not be influenced by other external processes that are going on, because you know that in the past they have been criticized about the manner in which they exercise their constitutional obligation, particularly in the recent process of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. So they are quite mindful that they need to actually proceed with their own processes, given that they are one of the arms of the state, and therefore they would not want to be influenced by the other arm of the state, which is the judiciary. So in the current form of things, they are going to say that in the absence of any interdict, they are going to continue with the process. Well, but of course, Nompu, we have been trying to get the political parties that are in the National Assembly to speak to us. I've got now Mr. Imam Sheikh from the NFP. Mr. Sheikh, thanks so much for joining us. I know it's quite a busy time out there. Firstly, as the NFP, will you be voting to support this report or not?
Well, let me start off by saying yes, indeed. I think one thing is important is just the adoption of the report. However, let us be mindful of the fact that there's an application before the court for a review on the findings. That makes it very, very difficult. How do you adopt something that is already being questioned in a court of law? So to be honest with you, as far as the NFP is concerned, why we believe and we accept the findings of the report, we find that this is a wasted exercise. Millions of rands of money are going to be spent here today. You've just heard the latest report. Now, 7 million children in this girl children are not able to even buy sanitary pads. And yet we are wasting millions of rands here, having lunch at Parliament, going to have lunch at City Hall, and all that is going to happen today. Remember, 400 people had to fly down here today just for the sitting. And all that is going to happen here, this is not going to go through. And if it does not go through, what does it mean?
The argument that there is no interdict prohibiting this sitting, does it hold water?
Well, let me tell you what would happen. Yes, there's no interdict means the sitting can continue. However, there is an application before the court, and we know there is a court judgment in this case, on a similar matter, of course. So all that would happen is this: if we pass it today, the president will interdict it tomorrow. There is a 99.9% charge. It's not going to see the light of day today. It's not going to be passed. All it means is you wasted taxpayers' money. And that's it, absolutely nothing else. So either way, you're not going to achieve anything. Whether we succeed in adopting the report, we're not going to be able to implement it because the president will then interdict it. And of course, if you remember, the president has brought an application for review, not even on an urgent basis. He's brought on the normal course of action, which can take 2 or 3 years. So you can see exactly what is happening. So I don't believe it's in the interest of the general 60 million public that we serve. I think today it's more an opportunity for political parties to score points here. And however, we want to reiterate that we believe that the president does have a case to answer.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Monzur. Imam Sheikh, NFP MP in the National Assembly. Of course, saying that perhaps maybe again, reiterating what other opposition parties have been saying, that this sitting might just be, at the end of the day, wasteful expenditure. Nombo, that's where we'll leave it for now. We'll talk to you in a bit. Back to you in studio.